Clara Brennan's knees hit the frozen ground. 6 children stood behind her, shivering, starving, watching their mother fall. Little Pearl tugged her sleeve and whispered, "Mama, why does nobody want us?" That question would haunt Clara forever, but not as much as what happened next. A stranger's voice cut through the howling wind. "Ma'am, how many children you got?" "6." Clara choked out. 6 mouths, no money, no home. The man didn't flinch. He said 3 words that changed everything. Subscribe now and watch until the end to see what those 3 words were. Comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. Elkhorn Valley, Montana Territory, December 1883. The blizzard had teeth. Clara Brennan pressed her body against the wind, one arm wrapped around baby James, the other pulling 4-year-old Josie forward through snow that reached the child's waist. Behind her, the older children stumbled in a ragged line. Will, first 13 years old, carrying Pearl on his back. Then Nellie, 11, gripping Ezra's hand so tight the boy whimpered. They hadn't eaten in 2 days. Clara's boots were soaked through. Her fingers had stopped hurting an hour ago, which frightened her more than the pain ever did. She knew what that meant. She'd seen frostbite take her neighbor's toes back in Nebraska. "Mama?" Pearl's voice came thin and reedy from Will's back. "Mama, I'm cold." "I know, baby." "Mama, when can we stop?" Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth would break them all. They had nowhere to stop. 3 towns in 2 weeks. 3 times she'd knocked on doors hat in hand, pride swallowed like broken glass. 3 times she'd heard the same words. A widow with 6 children. "We ain't running no charity house. You expect us to feed all them mouths in winter. Move along, ma'am. You ain't our problem." She wasn't anybody's problem. That was the thing about being unwanted. You belonged to no one. You mattered to no one. You could freeze to death on the side of a road, and the world would keep spinning without so much as a pause. "Ma." Will's voice cut through the wind. "Ma, Nellie's slowing down." Clara turned. Her eldest daughter had fallen 3 steps behind, her grip on Ezra loosening. The girl's lips were blue. "Nellie." Clara pushed back through the snow, grabbed her daughter's face with numb hands. "Nellie, look at me. Look at Mama." "I'm tired." Nellie's eyes fluttered. "Just want to sleep." "No." Clara shook her harder than she meant to. "No sleeping. You hear me? You keep walking. You keep your brother moving." "Mama." "You walk, Nellie. Jane Brennan. You walk her, so help me God." Clara's voice cracked. She pulled her daughter close, felt the small body trembling against her chest. "Please," she whispered into Nellie's hair. "Please, baby. I can't carry you. I can't carry all of you. You have to walk, just a little more." "Just until we find somewhere." "Where?" Will asked. His voice wasn't angry. It was worse than angry. It was empty. "Where are we going to find somewhere, Ma? Ain't nobody going to take us. You know it. I know it. We're going to die out here." "William Samuel Brennan." Clara straightened jaw tight. "You do not speak that way in front of your brothers and sisters." "Why? Because it ain't true." "Because I said so." Will stared at her. 13 years old, but the eyes looking back at Clara belonged to an old man. A man who had watched his father cough blood for 6 months. A man who had buried that father with his own hands. A man who had seen his uncle steal everything they owned and throw them into the cold. "Pa wouldn't have let this happen," Will said quietly. "Pa would have done something." The words hit Clara like a fist to the chest. "Your father is dead." Her voice came out flat hard. "I am not. I am here. I am doing something. Now move your feet, boy, before I move them for you." Will held her gaze for one long moment. Then he turned and started walking again, Pearl still clinging to his back. Clara closed her eyes, drew one frozen breath, then another. "Samuel. Oh, Samuel. What do I do? What do I do now?" But Samuel wasn't there. Samuel was 6 feet under Nebraska soil, rotting in a pine box, while his brother lived in the house Samuel had built with his own hands. Clara opened her eyes and kept walking. The town appeared through the snow like a ghost. Elkhorn Valley. Clara had heard the name whispered by a trader 3 days back. Good people there, he'd said. Ranching community. Might find work. Might. That word again. The cruelest word in the English language. Might find food. Might find shelter. Might survive the night. Or might not. The main street stretched before them, wooden buildings hunched against the wind, their windows glowing warm and yellow. Clara's heart clenched at those windows. Behind each one, a fire, a meal, a bed, things her children hadn't known in weeks. Stay close, she told them. Stay together. Don't speak unless spoken to. She approached the first building. General store. The sign swung and creaked in the wind. Porter's Goods and Sundries. Clara pushed open the door. Warmth hit her like a wall. Her skin burned where the heat touched it. Behind her, Ezra let out a small moan of relief. A woman stood behind the counter. 50 or so gray hair pinned back, tight spectacles perched on her nose. She looked up at the blast of cold air, and her expression shifted from curiosity to wariness in the space of a heartbeat. Help you? The woman's voice wasn't friendly. Clara stepped forward, pulling off her soaked hat. Ma'am, my name is Clara Brennan. I'm looking for work. Any work. I can cook, clean, sew, tend animals. How many children you got? The woman cut her off, eyes moving past Clara to the cluster of small bodies huddled by the door. Clara swallowed. 6, ma'am. 6. The woman said the word like it tasted bad. And a husband. Widowed, ma'am. 2 years now. The woman's mouth pressed into a thin line. She shook her head slowly. Can't help you. Please. Clara hated the begging in her voice, but she couldn't stop it. Anything. A meal for the children. A place to warm up. I'll work for it. I said no. The woman's voice hardened. This is a small town, Mrs. Brennan. We look after our own. We ain't got resources to take on every drifter that blows through. We're not drifters. You got no home, no husband, and 6 mouths to feed. The woman crossed her arms. What would you call it? Clara's throat closed. Behind her, she heard Pearl start to cry, soft and hiccuping. They're a hotel, Clara managed. A boarding house, anywhere. Full up. The woman nodded toward the door. Best keep moving. Next town's about 30 miles east. 30 miles. In this storm. With 6 children. It was a death sentence, and they both knew it. Clara turned without another word. She gathered her children, pushed back out into the screaming wind, and felt something inside her crack. They tried 4 more doors. The blacksmith shook his head before Clara could finish speaking. The livery stable owner laughed, actually laughed, and asked if she expected him to bed down with horses. The saloon keeper looked her up and down with eyes that made Clara's skin crawl, then suggested a different kind of work. Clara grabbed Will's arm before the boy could lunge at the man. The church was locked. She stood there on the steps, staring at that locked door, and wondered what kind of God let his house stay dark while children froze outside it. Mama? Pearl had climbed down from Will's back. The 6-year-old stood in the snow, tears frozen on her cheeks, looking up at Clara with eyes too old for her face. Mama, why doesn't anybody want us? Clara dropped to her knees. The cold bit through her dress, into her skin, into her bones. She didn't care. Come here, baby. Pearl stumbled forward. Clara pulled her close, pulled all of them close, Will and Nellie and Ezra and the twins, until they formed one shivering, desperate knot of bodies. Listen to me, Clara whispered. All of you, listen good. 6 faces turned to her, 6 sets of eyes waiting for their mother to save them, the way she'd always saved them, the way mothers were supposed to save their children. I love you, Clara said. I love you more than breath, more than blood, more than my own life, and I am going to find us somewhere safe. Do you hear me? I don't care if I have to knock on every door in Montana territory. I don't care if I have to beg, borrow, or steal. You are my children. You are mine, and I will not let you die. Promise. Ezra's voice was tiny. Clara looked at her 8-year-old son. His lips were cracked. His nose was running. His eyes were red from crying and cold. I promise, she said. It was a lie. She knew it was a lie. She had nothing left, no money, no food, no hope. She was a widow with 6 children in a blizzard, and the world had made it very clear that she didn't matter. But she said it anyway. Because that's what mothers do. They stood and kept walking. Clara didn't know where they were going anymore. The town was behind them, the storm ahead of them, and the white void swallowed everything else. Her legs moved without thought. One step, another, another. Josie started crying. Then James. Then Ezra. Nellie was silent, which scared Clara more than the tears. Will kept his head down, his jaw set, Pearl heavy on his back. Clara's vision blurred. From cold. From tears. From exhaustion so deep it felt like dying. Her foot caught on something buried in the snow. She went down hard, twisting to protect baby James, her shoulders slamming into the frozen ground. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. For one long moment, she couldn't move. Could only lie there in the snow, her children screaming around her, the wind howling, the cold seeping through her clothes. Get up, she told herself. Get up, get up, get up. Her body didn't listen. Mama, Pearl was pulling at her arm. Mama, please, please, get up. You said we couldn't stop. You said, can't. Clara's voice came out cracked, broken. Baby, I can't. Mama can't. You have to. Pearl's face was red snot running down her lip, tears streaming. You have to, Mama. If you fall, we all fall. That's what you said. That's what you always say. Please. Clara closed her eyes. Samuel, I'm sorry. I tried. I tried so hard. Ma'am. The voice came from nowhere and everywhere. Clara's eyes snapped open. A figure stood above her, dark against the white sky. Tall, broad-shouldered, a hat pulled low against the wind. Ma'am, you hurt. Clara blinked. The figure didn't disappear. My children, she gasped. I see 'em. The figure crouched down. A man's face came into focus, weathered lines around the eyes, a jaw that looked like it had been carved from the same stone as the mountains. 6 of 'em, if I'm counting right. You got 6 children, ma'am. Yes. And you're out here in this storm. Yes. Alone. Yes. The man was quiet for a moment. His eyes moved over her children. Pearl still crying, Will standing protective, the others huddled together like animals awaiting slaughter. Town turn you away? He asked. Clara's jaw tightened. Every door. The man stood. He was tall, taller than Samuel had been, and he moved with the easy grace of someone who'd spent his whole life working with his body. That's Hannah Porter's doing most like. Woman's got a heart like a turnip, cold and hard. Please. Clara pushed herself up onto her elbows, ignoring the pain that shot through her shoulder. If you have food, anything my children haven't eaten in, I got food. Clara froze. Got a house too, the man continued. About 2 miles north of here. Warm, dry, plenty of room. He looked down at her. You can walk 2 miles, ma'am? Clara stared at him. This was a trick. It had to be a trick. Nobody offered shelter to a widow with 6 children. Not without wanting something in return. Not without conditions, expectations, prices that women like Clara couldn't afford to pay. What do you want? She asked flatly. The man's eyebrows rose slightly. Excuse me? For the food. The shelter. What do you want in exchange? Something shifted in the man's expression. Not offense. Something sadder. Older. You've had folks ask for things before, he said quietly. Things that weren't theirs to ask. Clara didn't answer. She didn't have to. The man nodded slowly. He reached up and removed his hat, a gesture of respect that Clara hadn't seen in months, and looked her dead in the eyes. My name is Tobias McAllister, he said. I got a ranch 2 miles north. I got more room than I know what to do with and more silence than any man should have to bear. I ain't asking for nothing, ma'am. Not your work, not your company, not nothing. I'm asking if you want to come in from the cold. He paused. You and all 6 of your children. Clara's throat tightened. Why? She whispered. Tobias McAllister looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Pearl, at the tears frozen on her cheeks, at the tiny hands still clutching Clara's sleeve. Because my mama was alone once too, he said simply. And somebody helped her. I figure I owe the world one. He extended his hand. Clara looked at it. Calloused, strong, steady. She looked at her children, at their hungry faces, their frozen fingers, their eyes full of something she hadn't seen in weeks. Hope. Mama. Pearl's voice was barely a whisper. Mama, can we go with the man? Please, I'm so cold, Mama. I'm so cold. Clara's lip trembled. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to keep moving, to trust no one. She'd been betrayed by family her own brother-in-law had thrown them into the cold. Why should a stranger be any different? But Pearl was 6 years old, and she was freezing to death. But James hadn't stopped shivering in 3 hours. But Nellie's lips were blue, and Will's eyes were empty, and Clara had nothing left. Nothing. She was out of towns to try and out of doors to knock on and out of hope. She reached up and took Tobias McAllister's hand. His grip was warm, strong. He pulled her to her feet like she weighed nothing. This way, he said. Stay close. Storm's getting worse. He turned and started walking. Clara gathered her children and followed. Behind them, the town of Elk Horn Valley disappeared into the white. The ranch materialized slowly through the blizzard. First the fence posts, dark lines against the snow. Then the barn, a hulking shadow. Then the house itself, 2 stories sturdy timber smoke curling from the chimney. Tobias led them to the porch, stamped the snow off his boots, and pushed open the front door. Warmth flooded out. Clara nearly collapsed from the force of it. Beside her, Ezra made a sound she'd never heard from him before, a sob of pure relief. Get inside, Tobias said. All of you, mind your boots by the door. The children stumbled in. Clara followed last, closing the door behind her, shutting out the howling wind. The house was simple but solid. A large fireplace dominated one wall, flames dancing high. A wooden table sat in the center of the main room, surrounded by chairs. A kitchen area in the back, stairs leading up to a second floor, and everywhere silence. Not the silence of peace, the silence of emptiness, of rooms that hadn't heard laughter in years, of a life lived alone. Clara noticed the mantel above the fireplace, a single photograph in a wooden frame, a woman young, pretty dark-haired, a child in her arms, a little girl. Tobias followed her gaze. My wife, he said quietly. Eliza, and my daughter Rose. They're gone. The word came out flat. 4 years now. Fire. Clara's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Tobias didn't respond. He moved toward the kitchen, pulling open cupboards. Got bread, he said. Dried meat, beans, nothing fancy, but it's food. He set items on the table. The children stared at the food with wide, disbelieving eyes. Can we? Ezra started. Eat, Tobias said. Go on. Don't need to ask. The children fell on the food like wolves. Clara watched them, tears burning her eyes. When had they last eaten a real meal? When had they last felt safe? Tobias stood by the fire watching. His expression was unreadable. "There's a room upstairs," he said after a while. "Big bed, quilts. You and the young ones can have it. The older boy can take the loft in the barn. It's warm, I promise." He paused. "I'll sleep down here." Clara looked at him. "Mr. McAllister." "Tobias." "Tobias." She swallowed. "I need you to understand something. I have nothing to give you. Nothing. No money. No—" She stopped, started again. "I've had men offer help before. They always wanted something." Tobias met her eyes. "I know." "So why—" "I told you, my mama was alone once." "That's not enough. Nobody does this. Nobody takes in a woman with 6 children out of the goodness of their heart. Nobody." "Mrs. Brennan." His voice was quiet but firm. "Look at this house. Look at it. 4 years I've been rattling around in here like a ghost. 4 years of silence. 4 years of eating alone at that table, sleeping alone in that bed, watching that fire burn down to nothing every night." He paused. "You need a roof. I don't know what I need. But I know this house has been dead since they died. Maybe having children in it again will help. Maybe it won't. But I'm willing to find out if you are." Clara stared at him. He wasn't handsome. Not in any classical way. His face was too weathered. His nose slightly crooked, a scar running through his left eyebrow. But there was something in his eyes, a steadiness, a weight, that made Clara believe him. She turned to look at her children. Pearl had fallen asleep at the table, face down in her arms, a half-eaten piece of bread still in her fist. The twins leaned against each other, eyelids drooping. Even Will had stopped scowling, exhaustion finally winning over vigilance. "One night," Clara said quietly. "We stay one night. Then we talk." Tobias nodded. "One night?" He didn't smile. Didn't offer more words. He simply moved to the fire and added another log, sending sparks spiraling up into the dark. Clara gathered her sleeping children and led them up the narrow stairs. The bedroom was clean, simple. A large bed with quilts piled high. A window that looked out onto nothing but white. She laid the children down one by one. James and Josie in the center. Pearl and Ezra on either side. Nellie at the edge. Will stood in the doorway. "Ma." "Go to the barn, Will. He said the loft is warm." "I don't trust him." "I don't trust anybody." Clara pulled a quilt over her sleeping daughters. "But we don't have a choice. Not tonight." Will's jaw worked. "Pa would have—" "Your father is dead, William." Clara's voice came out sharper than she intended. She saw her son flinch. Drew a breath. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Yeah." Will turned away. "You did." He disappeared down the stairs. A moment later, Clara heard the front door open and close. She stood alone in the room full of sleeping children. Through the window, the blizzard raged on. But inside this house, for the first time in weeks, there was warmth. There was food. There was silence that didn't feel like death. Clara walked to the window and looked out into the white void. Somewhere out there, Silas Brennan was sleeping in her husband's bed in her husband's house, spending her husband's money. Somewhere out there, the world kept turning as if Clara and her children didn't exist. But here in this strange house with this strange man, they were alive. For now, that had to be enough. Clara turned from the window. She lay down beside her children, pulled a quilt over herself, and closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her lids, she saw Tobias McAllister's face, the steadiness in his eyes, the photograph on the mantel, a wife and daughter gone 4 years, a house full of ghosts, and now 6 children sleeping under his roof. What kind of man takes in strangers during a storm? What kind of man offers everything and asks for nothing? Clara didn't know, but tomorrow she would find out. The fire crackled downstairs. The wind howled outside. And Clara Brennan slept, truly slept for the first time, since her husband died. The morning came slow and gray. Clara woke to the sound of children breathing. 6 small bodies pressed against her under the quilts, warm for the first time in weeks. She lay still, afraid to move, afraid that moving would shatter whatever fragile piece they'd found. Downstairs, something clattered. A pot. A stove door. Clara's eyes snapped open. She slid from the bed, carefully tucking the quilts around Pearl and the twins, and crept to the door. Her stockinged feet made no sound on the wooden floor. The stairs creaked under her weight. In the kitchen, Tobias stood with his back to her. He was stirring something in a pot, steam rising around his face. The smell hit Clara like a physical force. Porridge. Hot porridge with molasses. Her stomach clenched so hard she nearly doubled over. "Didn't mean to wake you." Tobias didn't turn around. "Figured the young ones would be hungry." Clara gripped the doorframe. "How did you know I was there?" "Heard the third stair. Always creaks." He lifted the pot from the stove. "Coffee's hot if you want it." Clara didn't move. She watched him ladle porridge into bowls, his movements efficient and unhurried. He set 7 bowls on the table. 7 spoons. "You counted," she said. 6 children, 1 mother, 7 bowls. He finally turned to face her. "Not hard math, ma'am." Clara's throat tightened. When had anyone counted her? When had anyone thought to include her in the meal? "The older boy," Tobias said. "Will. He's already up. Saw him heading to the barn about an hour ago." "He doesn't trust you." "Smart boy." Tobias poured 2 cups of coffee, set one at the end of the table. "I wouldn't trust me either if I were him." Clara crossed her arms. "Then why should I?" Tobias looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down heavily, wrapping both hands around his coffee cup. "You shouldn't," he said quietly. "Not yet. Trust is earned, Mrs. Brennan. I know that better than most." He took a slow sip. "All I'm asking is that you give me a chance to earn it." Before Clara could respond, footsteps thundered on the stairs. Ezra appeared first, eyes wide, nose twitching at the smell of food. Mama, is that porridge?" Clara said. "Mr. McAllister made breakfast." Ezra stared at Tobias like the man had just performed a miracle. "For us. For all of you." Tobias gestured to the table. "Sit down before it gets cold." The other children followed quickly. Nellie carrying Pearl, the twins stumbling sleepily behind. They gathered around the table, hands hovering over the bowls, eyes darting to Clara for permission. She nodded. They ate like they were afraid the food would disappear, spooning porridge into their mouths so fast they barely chewed. Pearl burned her tongue and started crying, but she didn't stop eating. Clara watched them. Her hands shook. "You're not eating." Tobias's voice was low. "I'm not hungry." "Liar." Clara's head snapped toward him. "Excuse me." "You haven't eaten in days. Maybe longer. You gave everything to them." Tobias pushed a bowl across the table toward her. "Eat, Mrs. Brennan. You can't take care of anybody if you're dead." The words hit harder than Clara expected. She looked down at the bowl. The porridge was thick, sweetened with molasses still steaming. Her hand reached out before she could stop it. The first bite made her eyes water. "Thank you," she whispered, the words barely audible. Tobias just nodded and looked away. The front door banged open. Will stood in the doorway, snow dusting his shoulders, his face flushed red from cold. He looked at his family gathered around the table, eating a stranger's food in a stranger's house, and something dark crossed his expression. "Will." Clara stood. "Come eat." "Already ate." "You did not. Come sit down." "I said I already ate." Will's jaw tightened. "Found some dried beef in the barn." "That was for the horses." Tobias's voice was mild. "But I reckon they won't miss it." Will's eyes narrowed. "You watching me, mister?" "I'm watching everybody. It's my house." The two stared at each other. Clara felt the tension crackling between them like heat lightning. "Will," she said sharply. "Sit. Down." Her son held Tobias's gaze for one more heartbeat. Then he crossed to the table and dropped into a chair, arms folded across his chest. "The boy's got fire," Tobias said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "Good. He'll need it." Clara didn't ask what he meant. The meal finished in near silence. Pearl fell asleep again, face sticky with molasses. The twins started squabbling over the last spoonful of porridge until Nellie split it between them with the patience of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Tobias stood and began clearing the bowls. "Storm's let up some," he said. "Won't last. Another front's coming in tonight, bigger than the last." He stacked the bowls by the basin. "You're welcome to stay through it. All of you." Clara's hands clenched in her lap. "We can't keep taking from you." "You're not taking. I'm offering." "There's a difference." Tobias turned to face her fully. "Yes, ma'am, there is." The front door opened again. Clara hadn't heard anyone approach, but suddenly a woman stood in the doorway. 50-ish gray hair, pinned back spectacles perched on her nose. Hannah Porter, the woman from the general store. Clara's blood went cold. "Tobias McAllister." Hannah's voice was sharp. "What in God's name are you doing?" Tobias didn't flinch. "Morning, Hannah." "Don't you morning Hannah me." The woman stepped inside, her eyes sweeping over the children, landing on Clara with barely concealed contempt. "I heard rumors last night. Said you brought home that widow woman and all her offspring. Thought folks were exaggerating." She snorted. "Clearly they weren't. What I do on my own property ain't your concern." "It is, when you're being a damn fool." Hannah jabbed a finger toward Clara. "You know what kind of trouble follows a woman like that? 6 children. No husband. She's either cursed or careless, and neither one bodes well for this community." Clara stood slowly. Her legs trembled, but her voice came out steady. "Ma'am, I don't want any trouble. We'll be moving on as soon as—" "You'll be moving on now." Hannah cut her off. "Tobias, you've got standing in this town. People respect you, but if you keep harboring vagrants, that respect won't last long." "Vagrants." Tobias repeated the word like it tasted sour. "You see vagrants, Hannah? I see a burden. A widow with 6 mouths. That's not a family. That's an anchor. She'll drag you down, and everyone else with her." Pearl started crying. The small sound broke something in Clara. She moved to her daughter, scooped her up, held her tight against her chest. "We'll go," Clara said, her voice hollow. You'll stay." Tobias's voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "You'll stay right where you are, Mrs. Brennan." He turned to Hannah. His expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had gone hard. "These people are guests in my home, Hannah. My home, not yours, not the town's, mine." He took a step toward her. "Now you can stand there and run your mouth all morning, or you can go back to your store and mind your own business. But understand something." Another step. "If anybody in this town causes trouble for Mrs. Brennan or her children, they'll answer to me. And you know what that means." Hannah's face paled slightly. Her mouth opened. Closed. "You're making a mistake, Tobias." "Wouldn't be my first." The woman held his gaze for a long moment. Then she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. Silence fell. Pearl's crying had stopped. She was staring at Tobias with something like wonder. "You told her to go away," Pearl whispered. "You told her to leave my mama alone." Tobias crouched down to the child's eye level. His voice softened. "I did. Nobody ever does that. People always yell at Mama. They say mean things." "Well," Tobias straightened, "they won't say them here." He walked past Clara without another word and headed outside. The door closed quietly behind him. Clara stood frozen, Pearl still in her arms. Will was staring at the door with an expression Clara couldn't read. Confusion. Maybe something else. "Ma." His voice was rough. "Why'd he do that?" "I don't know. People don't just—" Will stopped. Swallowed. "People don't stand up for strangers like that." "No," Clara said softly. "They don't." She set Pearl down and moved to the window. Outside, Tobias was walking toward the barn, his shoulders hunched against the cold. "Who are you, Tobias McAllister? What do you want from us? And why does it feel like the answer might change everything?" The day passed in strange silence. Tobias worked outside, mending fences, tending to the horses. Clara watched him through the window, while the children explored the house with cautious curiosity. She couldn't sit still. By mid-morning, she had cleaned the kitchen, swept the floors, and organized the pantry. By noon, she was scrubbing the fireplace stones with a brush she'd found in the cellar. "You don't have to do that." Clara whipped around. Tobias stood in the doorway, snow melting on his coat. "I want to earn our keep," she said. "You're a guest. Guests don't stay for free." Something flickered in Tobias's eyes. He crossed to the table, sat down heavily. "You're stubborn." "I'm practical." Clara set down the brush. "I won't be beholden to anyone, not ever again." "What happened to you?" The question caught her off guard. She looked at him, really looked, and saw genuine curiosity in his face. Not prying, not judgment, just wanting to understand. "My husband died," she said flatly. 2 years ago. Consumption. Coughed for 6 months, then just stopped breathing one night." She turned back to the fireplace. "His brother showed up 3 days after the funeral. Had papers. Said Samuel owed him money. Said the ranch was collateral. The papers were fake." Clara's hands stilled. "How did you know?" "Because that's how men like that operate. They wait for death. Then they take what isn't theirs." Tobias's voice had gone hard. "What was your brother-in-law's name?" "Silas. Silas Brennan." Tobias was quiet for a moment. "He let you go. Just like that. He didn't let me do anything." Clara's voice dropped. "I ran. Middle of the night. Took the children and ran before he could—" She stopped. "Before he could what?" Clara didn't answer. She didn't have to. Tobias's jaw tightened. He stood slowly, moved to stand beside her at the fireplace. "He won't find you here," he said quietly. "And if he does, he won't take you back." Clara turned to face him. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." "You know nothing. I'm a widow with 6 children. I have no money, no property, nothing to offer. I'm exactly what Hannah Porter said I am. A burden." "Is that what you believe?" The question hit Clara like a slap. Her eyes burned. "It's what everyone believes." "Not everyone." Tobias held her gaze. "Not me." Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Ezra burst into the room, face pale. "Mama! Come quick, Nellie won't wake up." Clara's heart stopped. She was up the stairs before she knew she was moving. Tobias right behind her. She burst into the bedroom to find Nellie lying limp on the bed, her face flushed red, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "No!" Clara fell to her knees beside her daughter. "No, no, no. Nellie, Nellie baby, wake up." She touched her daughter's forehead, burning hot. "Fever," she breathed. "Oh God, she's burning up." "How long has she been sick?" Tobias was already moving, pulling quilts back, checking the girl's pulse. She was tired, but I thought the cold—" Clara's voice cracked. "I should have noticed. I should have—" "Stop!" Tobias's voice was firm. "Blaming yourself won't help her. We need to bring the fever down." He turned to Ezra, who stood frozen in the doorway. "Boy, run to the barn. In the back corner there's a wooden chest. Inside you'll find dried willow bark. Bring it here. Fast." Ezra bolted. "You know medicine?" Clara asked, desperate. "I know enough." Tobias pulled off his coat. "My wife Eliza, she taught me. She had a gift for healing." He grabbed a cloth from the basin, dipped it in water, pressed it to Nellie's forehead. "Your daughter's strong. She walked through that blizzard. She'll fight this. She's 11 years old. She's your daughter. That means she's a fighter." Clara looked at him through tear-blurred eyes. "How do you know?" Tobias met her gaze. "Because you're still standing, after everything. You're still standing. That kind of strength doesn't skip generations." Ezra returned breathless, clutching a bundle of dried bark. Tobias took it, began crushing it between his fingers. "I need hot water, a cup, and more cloths." Clara moved without thinking. Boiling water gathering cloths, her hands shaking, but her mind focused. Behind her she heard Tobias talking to Nellie in a low, steady voice. "Easy, girl, easy. You're safe. You're warm. Just rest. Just let your body rest." The night stretched on. Clara sat beside Nellie's bed, pressing cool cloths to her daughter's forehead, dripping willow bark tea between her cracked lips. The other children slept fitfully around them. Pearl curled against Clara's leg. The twins tangled together at the foot of the bed. Will sat in the corner watching, always watching. Tobias came and went, bringing more water, more bark, more cloths. He didn't speak much, but his presence was steady, constant. Around midnight, Nellie's fever spiked. The girl started thrashing, crying out for her father, for home, for things she couldn't have. Clara held her down, tears streaming, praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't take her. I can't lose another one. I can't." "You won't." Tobias's voice came from beside her. He was there, suddenly pressing fresh cloths to Nellie's wrists, her neck. "You won't lose her, Clara. I promise." It was the first time he'd used her name. Clara looked at him. His face was drawn, exhausted, but his eyes were fierce. "Don't make promises you can't keep," she said. "I don't." The hours crawled. Clara's eyes burned. Her body ached, but she didn't move from Nellie's side. Sometime before dawn, the fever broke. Nellie's breathing eased. Her skin cooled. Her thrashing stopped. Clara pressed her forehead to her daughter's hand and wept. "She's through it." Tobias's voice was rough. "Fever's broken. She'll need rest, but she'll pull through." Clara couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but cry. She felt a hand on her shoulder, warm, steady. "You did good, Mama." Tobias's voice was soft. "You stayed with her. You fought for her. That matters more than any medicine." Clara looked up at him. This man, this stranger, who had taken them in, fed them, protected them, fought for her daughter's life through the night. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" Tobias was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Because I had a daughter once." His voice cracked slightly. "Rose. She was 3 years old. She had her mother's eyes and her mother's laugh, and she used to run to me every time I came through the door." He paused. "The night of the fire, I wasn't home. I was in town buying supplies. By the time I saw the smoke, it was too late." Clara's breath caught. "I couldn't save them." Tobias's eyes were distant. "I couldn't save my wife. I couldn't save my daughter. I've spent 4 years asking God why he let me live when they didn't." He looked at Clara. "Maybe this is why. Maybe I was supposed to live so I could help you. Help them." He nodded toward the sleeping children. "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. But when I saw you in that snow falling, your children crying, something in me said this. This is why you're still breathing, Tobias. This is what you're supposed to do." Tears slid down Clara's cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For your wife, your daughter. I'm sorry for your husband." Tobias's hand tightened on her shoulder, then released. Loss doesn't make us weak, Clara. It makes us careful who we let in. And that's okay. You take all the time you need. He stood. I'm going to check on the horses. You should sleep. He moved toward the door. Tobias. He stopped. Thank you, Clara said. For Nellie, for everything. Tobias nodded once, then he was gone. Clara looked at her daughter, at her children, at the walls of this strange house that was starting to feel less strange. She was still afraid, still uncertain, but something had shifted in the night. Something small, but undeniable. For the first time in 2 years, Clara Brennan wasn't alone. Morning light crept through the windows. Clara must have dozed because she woke to the sound of Pearl's voice, high and urgent. Mama! Mama, there's a man outside! Clara's eyes snapped open. What? A man. On a horse. He's talking to Mr. Tobias. Clara was on her feet in an instant. She crossed to the window, pushed aside the curtain. Her blood turned to ice. A figure sat on horseback in the yard. Dark coat. Dark hat. A face she knew better than her own. Silas Brennan. He had found them. Mama! Pearl's voice trembled. Mama, who is that man? Clara grabbed her daughter, pulled her away from the window. Get your brothers and sisters. Wake them up. Don't make a sound. Mama, you're scaring me. Do as I say, Pearl. Now. The girl ran. Clara looked out the window again. Tobias stood between Silas and the house, his posture rigid. Silas was saying something, gesturing toward the building, toward her. Clara's hands shook. She had run. Run for weeks. Run through blizzards and hunger and rejection. Run until her body broke, and still he found her. Still he came. Downstairs, the front door opened. Clara heard footsteps. Voices. Tobias's low and steady, and another voice. Just want to see my sister-in-law friend. Family business. Nothing more. Clara closed her eyes. Family business. That's what Silas had called it when he forged the papers. When he stole her home. When he cornered her in the barn 3 days after the funeral and told her exactly what he expected from her now that Samuel was gone. She had run that very night. And now here he was. In this house. In the only safe place her children had known in months. Mrs. Brennan. Tobias's voice came from the base of the stairs. Clara opened her eyes, drew a breath, and walked down to face her nightmare. Silas Brennan stood in the middle of the room. He was handsome in a cold way. Dark hair slicked back, clean-shaven clothes too fine for a rancher. He smiled when he saw Clara, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Clara, there you are. His voice was smooth. You've led me on quite a chase. Get out. Now is that any way to greet family? You're not my family. Clara's voice shook. You stole my home. You threatened my children. I'm here to bring you back. Silas cut her off, his smile fading. The children, too. Whatever misunderstanding we had, it's water under the bridge. Come home, Clara, where you belong. I don't belong to you. Silas's eyes hardened. Samuel's dead. The ranch is mine. And you. He took a step toward her. You're mine, too. Whether you like it or not. That's far enough. Tobias moved between them. His voice was quiet, but there was something dangerous beneath the surface. Silas's eyes flickered to him. This isn't your concern, friend. She's under my roof. That makes it my concern. She's my brother's widow. And she doesn't want to go with you. Tobias's hands hung loose at his sides, but Clara could see the tension in his shoulders. I think you should leave. Silas laughed. Leave? I've traveled 300 miles to find her. I'm not leaving without what's mine. Nothing here is yours. The two men stared at each other. Clara's heart pounded. Slowly, Silas's smile returned. Colder this time. You want her, he said. I see it now. Widow with 6 brats and you still want her. What's wrong, friend? Couldn't find a woman of your own?" Tobias didn't respond. "Let me guess." Silas circled slowly like a snake. "You're lonely, desperate for company. She comes along young enough, pretty enough, willing to spread her—" Tobias moved so fast, Clara barely saw it. One moment Silas was talking. The next he was on the ground, blood streaming from his nose, Tobias standing over him. "You don't speak about her that way." Tobias's voice was ice. "Not in my house, not anywhere." Silas scrambled backward, eyes wide with shock. Blood dripped from his chin onto the wooden floor. "You'll regret this," he spat. "Both of you. I have connections, lawyers, judges. I'll have her declared unfit. I'll take those children. I'll get out." Tobias reached down, grabbed Silas by the collar, and hauled him toward the door. He threw him out into the snow like a sack of grain. "Come back here again, and I'll put you in the ground next to my wife." He slammed the door. Silence. Clara stood frozen, trembling from head to toe. Behind her she heard a small voice. "Mama." Pearl stood at the top of the stairs. The other children clustered behind her. Their faces were pale, terrified. "It's okay," Clara managed. "It's okay, babies. He's gone." But she knew it wasn't over. Silas Brennan didn't give up. He never gave up. And now he knew where they were. Clara looked at Tobias. He stood by the door, breathing hard, his knuckles split and bleeding. "He'll come back," she said quietly. "I know. He'll bring men, lawyers, maybe a marshal. He has money, power." "I know." "Why did you do that?" Clara's voice cracked. "Why did you risk everything for us?" Tobias turned to face her. His eyes were fierce. "Because someone should have done it for my wife," he said. "Someone should have stood between her and the fire. Someone should have saved her." He took a step toward Clara. "I couldn't save them, but I can save you, if you let me." Clara's tears fell freely now. The children crept down the stairs, gathering around her. Pearl clutched her skirt. Ezra pressed against her side. Even Will stood close, his eyes red. "What do we do, Mama?" Pearl whispered. Clara looked at her children, at this man, at the walls of a house that had become against all odds something like home. "We stay," she said. "We stay, and we fight." Tobias nodded once. Outside, Silas Brennan's horse galloped into the distance, but the war had just begun. 3 days passed like a held breath. Clara couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind against the windows sent her bolt upright in bed. She kept the children close, never letting them wander far from the house. Even Will, stubborn as he was, stayed near. Tobias worked from dawn to dark, mending fences, reinforcing the barn doors, checking the road 3-4 times a day, waiting. On the 4th morning, Clara found him at the kitchen table before sunrise. His rifle lay across his knees. His coffee sat untouched cold. "You haven't slept," she said. "Neither have you." Clara pulled out a chair and sat across from him. "He's not coming alone. You know that." "I know." "Silas has money, friends in high places. He'll bring a marshal, maybe more." She leaned forward. "Tobias, I can't let you throw your life away for us. If we leave now tonight, maybe—" "No. You don't understand. He'll ruin you. Everything you've built." "I understand fine." Tobias lifted his eyes to meet hers. "You think I care about this ranch? About these walls?" He shook his head slowly. "I've spent 4 years waiting to die, Clara. 4 years going through the motions, pretending to be alive. Then you showed up, you and those 6 children. And for the first time since the fire, I felt something." Clara's throat tightened. "Tobias, I'm not letting him take you. I'm not letting anyone take you." His voice dropped. "Not while I'm breathing." The front door burst open. Will stood in the doorway, chest heaving. "Riders, coming up the north road. 6 of them." Clara's blood went cold. Tobias was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. How far? Half mile, maybe less. Get your mother and the children upstairs. Lock the door. Don't come down until I tell you. I ain't hiding. Will's jaw set. I can fight. You're 13 years old. I'm old enough to protect my family. Tobias stared at the boy for a long moment. Then he reached behind the door and pulled out a shotgun. He handed it to Will. You know how to use this. Pa taught me. Then you stand at the top of the stairs. Anyone comes through that door who isn't me, you shoot. Understand? Will took the shotgun. His hands were shaking, but his eyes were steady. Yes, sir. Clara grabbed Tobias's arm. You can't face 6 men alone. I've faced worse. You'll die. Maybe. Tobias looked at her. Really looked. But your children will live. That's what matters. He pulled free and walked out the door. Clara stood frozen for one terrible moment. Then she gathered her children and ran upstairs. The bedroom felt too small, too fragile. Clara pushed the younger children against the far wall away from the window. Pearl was crying. The twins clung to each other. Nellie, still weak from the fever, sat pale and trembling on the bed. Will positioned himself at the top of the stairs, shotgun raised. Mama? Ezra's voice was barely a whisper. Mama is the bad man coming. Shh, baby. It's going to be okay. You're lying. The 8-year-old's eyes were too old, too knowing. You always say that when things are bad. Clara pulled him close. She had no words, no comfort, only fear. Outside, horses approached. Hooves on frozen ground getting closer, closer. Then silence. A voice cut through the stillness. Silas. McAllister. I know you're in there. I've got 5 men with me and a federal marshal. Come out peaceful and nobody gets hurt. Clara crept to the window, peered through a crack in the curtain. Silas sat on his horse at the front of the group. Beside him, a man with a star pinned to his coat. Behind them, 4 others, all armed. Tobias stood alone on the porch. This is private property, Tobias called out. You've got no business here. The marshal nudged his horse forward. I've got a warrant, Mr. McAllister, for the woman, Clara Brennan. She's wanted for theft and abandonment of property in Nebraska territory. That's a lie. Tobias's voice didn't waver. She didn't steal anything. Her brother-in-law forged papers to take her land. That's for a court to decide. The marshal pulled a document from his coat. I'm authorized to take her into custody, the children too. Over my dead body, Silas laughed. That can be arranged. Clara's hands shook against the windowsill. She watched Tobias standing alone against 6 men, and something cracked inside her. She couldn't let him die for her. She couldn't let her children watch another man fall because of her. Mama, no. Will's voice came sharp from the stairs. He'd seen her move toward the door. Stay with your brothers and sisters, Will. You can't go out there. I have to. He'll take you. He'll take us all. Clara turned to face her son. Tears streamed down her face. If I don't go, Tobias dies. Is that what you want, another man dead because of us? Will's face crumpled. For a moment he looked his age. 13. Just a boy. I don't want to lose you, Ma. Clara crossed to him, cupped his face in her hands. You won't lose me. I promise. I'll find a way back to you. I always do. She kissed his forehead. Then she walked down the stairs. The cold hit her like a wall. Clara stepped onto the porch beside Tobias. He turned eyes wide. What are you doing? Stopping this. Clara, get back inside. No. She looked at Silas, at the marshal, at the armed men behind them. Then she stepped forward, chin raised. I'll go with you. Clara. Tobias grabbed her arm. Let me go, Tobias. Her voice was calm, steady. This is my fight, not yours. The hell it isn't. Those are my children up there. My children. She turned to face him fully. I've lost my husband, my home, my pride. I will not lose them. If going with Silas means they stay safe, then I go. He won't keep you safe. You know what he wants. I know. Clara's voice dropped. I know exactly what he wants, and I'll die before I give it to him. But I won't let you die first. She pulled free and walked toward the horses. Silas's smile was poison. Smart woman. Always said you had more sense than my brother. Shut your mouth. Clara stopped 5 feet from his horse. I'll go with you, but the children stay. That's not how this works. It is, or I don't go anywhere. Clara's eyes blazed. You want me fine. But those children stay with Tobias. They're not part of your claim. They're not property. They're human beings. The marshal shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, I've got orders. Your orders are for me, not for 6 innocent children. Clara stared him down. You take them from a warm home in the middle of winter, drag them 300 miles to Nebraska, and for what? To satisfy this man's greed. She pointed at Silas. Look at him. You think he cares about those children? He cares about controlling me. That's all he's ever cared about. The marshal's jaw tightened. He looked at Silas. She has a point. The warrant's for her, not the kids. The children are my brother's heirs, Silas said through gritted teeth. They belong to the family. They belong to their mother. The marshal's voice hardened. And she's right. I'm not dragging 6 children through a blizzard. That's not what I signed up for. Silas's face flushed red. You work for me. I work for the law, and the law says I bring in Clara Brennan, not her children. For a moment, Clara thought Silas might explode. His hands shook on the reins. His eyes burned with fury. Then he smiled. Cold, calculating. Fine, the woman comes. The children stay. He looked at Tobias. For now. Tobias moved to Clara's side. This isn't over. No. Silas's smile widened. It isn't. The marshal dismounted, pulling a set of iron shackles from his saddlebag. Ma'am, I'm going to have to... Don't. Tobias's voice was ice. You put chains on her, and warrant or no warrant, I'll put you in the ground. The marshal hesitated. I'll go peaceful, Clara said quietly. No chains. I give you my word. The marshal looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded and put the shackles away. Mount up behind me, ma'am. Clara turned to face the house. 6 small faces pressed against the upstairs window. Pearl was sobbing. The twins looked confused. Nellie held Ezra tight. And Will stood on the porch now, shotgun still in his hands, tears streaming down his face. Mama, please. Clara walked to him. She took the shotgun gently from his hands and set it aside. Then she pulled him close. Listen to me, she whispered. You're the man of this family now. You take care of your brothers and sisters. You mind Mr. Tobias. You stay strong. I can't. You can. Clara pulled back, gripped his shoulders. You're Samuel Brennan's son. You're my son. You can do anything. She kissed his cheek. Then she turned and walked back to the marshal's horse. Tobias caught her arm one last time. I'm coming for you, he said low enough that only she could hear. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what I have to do. I'm coming for you, Clara. She looked into his eyes, saw the fire there, the promise. I believe you, she whispered. Then she climbed onto the marshal's horse, wrapped her arms around his waist, and didn't look back. The children's screams followed her into the wind. The ride was brutal. Snow fell thick and fast, cutting visibility to nearly nothing. Clara clung to the marshal's back, her face buried against his coat, trying to block out the cold. Trying to block out everything. Silas rode ahead, his back straight, his posture triumphant. She wanted to kill him. The thought came clear and sharp, without hesitation. She wanted to wrap her hands around his throat and squeeze until the light left his eyes. Until he felt even a fraction of the fear he'd put her through. But she couldn't. Not yet. They rode for hours. The daylight faded. The cold deepened. Finally, Silas called a halt near a cluster of buildings, an old mining town half abandoned. He dismounted and gestured to one of the shacks. "We'll camp here for the night. Head out at first light." The marshal helped Clara down. Her legs buckled numb from the ride. "You all right, ma'am?" Clara didn't answer. She stumbled toward the shack, pushed inside. It was empty, dark, freezing, but at least it blocked the wind. She sank onto the floor and wrapped her arms around herself. The door opened again. Silas stepped in. "Leave us," he told the marshal. "Sir, I don't think I said leave us." The marshal hesitated. Then he withdrew, closing the door behind him. Clara didn't move, didn't look up. Silas circled her slowly. "You've caused me a lot of trouble, Clara." "Good. I spent $300 tracking you down. $300 and 3 months. He crouched in front of her. "All because you couldn't accept the way things are." "The way things are." Clara finally lifted her eyes. "You mean you stealing my home? Threatening my children? Trying to force yourself on me 3 days after my husband's funeral?" Silas's hand shot out. He grabbed her chin, forced her to look at him. "Samuel was weak. He always was. Couldn't even keep his own wife satisfied." "Don't you speak his name." "I'll speak whatever I want." Silas's grip tightened. "You belong to me now, Clara. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." Clara spat in his face. Silas recoiled. His hand came up and Clara braced for the blow. It never came. The door burst open. The marshal stood in the doorway, eyes hard. "Problem here?" Silas stood slowly, wiping his face. "No problem. The lady and I were just catching up." "Well, catch up later. We've got company." "Company?" The marshal stepped aside. Behind him, Clara could see figures in the snow, men on horseback, a lot of them. "Who the hell?" Silas pushed past the marshal. Clara scrambled to her feet and followed. A group of riders had gathered at the edge of the camp. At the front, a figure she recognized. Doc Abraham Finch, the old physician from Elkhorn Valley, and beside him, a dozen men. Ranchers by the look of them. Hard-faced men with rifles and purpose. "Silas Brennan!" Doc's voice rang out across the snow. "We'd like a word." Silas's face drained of color. "Who are these people?" "Friends of Tobias McAllister," Doc replied. "Friends of Mrs. Brennan." He dismounted slowly, his old bones creaking. "We've been doing some checking, Mr. Brennan. Sent some telegrams. Talked to some folks in Nebraska. You have no authority here." "No, but the truth doesn't need authority." Doc reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. "This is a sworn statement from your brother's attorney, the real one. Says those papers you used to take the Brennan Ranch were forged. Says you've been wanted for fraud in Nebraska territory for 6 months." Silas went white. The marshal stepped forward. "Let me see that." Doc handed over the paper. The marshal read it, his expression darkening with every line. "Well, well." He looked at Silas. "Seems I've been lied to. That document is fake. It's signed by a federal judge." The marshal folded the paper and tucked it into his coat. "Silas Brennan, I'm placing you under arrest for fraud, forgery, and perjury." "You can't do this." "I just did." Silas lunged for his horse, but 2 of the ranchers were faster. They grabbed him, forced him to his knees in the snow. "Get your hands off me. Do you know who I am?" "We know exactly who you are." Doc Finch stepped closer. "You're the man who stole a widow's home, who tried to destroy her family, who thought he could get away with it because nobody would fight for her." He crouched down, met Silas's eyes. "You were wrong." Clara watched it all in stunned silence. Doc approached her, his weathered face softening. "Mrs. Brennan, are you all right?" "I don't understand." Her voice came out raw. "How did you—" "Tobias rode to town the moment they took you. Burst into my office like his coat was on fire. Said the woman he loved had been taken and he needed help." Doc smiled gently. Didn't take much to rally the men. Tobias McAllister is a good man. The town owes him plenty. The woman he... Clara stopped. Her heart stuttered. Oh, he didn't say it in so many words. Doc's eyes twinkled. But a man doesn't ride through a blizzard at midnight for just anyone. Clara's legs gave out. She sank into the snow, trembling tears streaming down her face. She was free. Silas was arrested. And Tobias? Where is he? She gasped. Where's Tobias? Right here. She turned. He stood at the edge of the camp snow, and his hair exhaustion carved into every line of his face. But his eyes were alive, burning. Clara didn't remember moving. One moment she was on the ground. The next she was in his arms, clinging to him, sobbing against his chest. I thought I lost you, she choked out. I thought, never. His arms tightened around her. I told you, Clara. I'm not letting anyone take you. But how did you... Doesn't matter. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. All that matters is you're here. You're safe. She stared up at him. This man who had been a stranger 2 weeks ago, who had opened his home, his heart risked everything for a woman with 6 children and nothing to offer. Tobias. Her voice broke. I don't deserve... Stop. His hands cupped her face, thumbs wiping her tears. You deserve everything, Clara. Everything. And if you let me, I'll spend the rest of my life proving it. Behind them, the ranchers were loading Silas onto a horse. The marshal was organizing the ride back to town, but Clara didn't see any of it. She only saw Tobias. The children, she whispered. I need to see my children. They're waiting for you. Tobias took her hand. Let's go home. Home. The word settled into Clara's chest like warmth returning to frozen limbs. She squeezed his hand, and they walked together through the snow. The ride back to Elkhorn Valley was quiet. Clara rode beside Tobias, their horses close, their silence comfortable. The storm had passed. The sky was clear, cold, and bright with stars. When the ranch came into view, Clara's breath caught. Every window was lit. Warm yellow light spilled out into the darkness, and on the porch, 6 small figures stood waiting. Mama! Pearl was running before Clara even dismounted. The child launched herself into her mother's arms, nearly knocking Clara over. Mama, you came back? You came back? I told you I would, baby. Clara held her daughter tight, tears streaming. I told you. The other children followed. Ezra and the twins. Nellie still pale but standing. And Will. Will stopped a few feet away, his face unreadable. Clara set Pearl down and walked to her son. Will. You left. His voice cracked. You left us. I know. You promised you'd never. I know. Clara reached out, touched his face. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. But I'm back now. I'm not leaving again. Never again. Will's face crumpled. The boy fell into her arms, sobbing, 13 years old, and finally allowed to be a child. Clara held him. Held all of them. And over their heads, she met Tobias's eyes. He stood apart, giving them space. But he was smiling. A real smile, the first she'd ever seen on his face. Thank you, she mouthed. He nodded once. Then Pearl tugged at Clara's hand. Mama. Mama is Mr. Tobias, our family now. Clara looked at her daughter, at her son, at the 4 other children gathered around her. Then she looked at Tobias. I don't know, baby, she said softly. I think that's something we all have to decide together. Pearl turned to Tobias. Her voice was clear, certain. I want you to be our family. Is that okay? Tobias crouched down to her level. His voice was gentle. That's more than okay, little one. That's everything I ever wanted. Pearl threw her arms around his neck, and Clara watched as one by one her children followed. Ezra first, then the twins, then Nellie, finally Will. The boy stood apart for a long moment. Then he walked to Tobias and extended his hand. "Thank you," Will said, "for bringing her back." Tobias shook the boy's hand solemnly. "Thank you for protecting your family while I was gone." Will nodded once. Then, to Clara's amazement, he stepped forward and hugged Tobias. Clara's tears fell freely now. She pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. Tobias looked at her over the children's heads. "Come here," he said softly. She went to him, his arms wrapped around her, around all of them, pulling them close. "We're going to be okay," he murmured against her hair. "All of us. I promise." Clara closed her eyes and let herself believe. For the first time in 2 years, she let herself believe. The weeks that followed felt like a dream Clara was afraid to wake from. The children settled into the ranch like they'd been born there. Ezra helped Tobias with the horses every morning, his restless energy finally finding purpose. Nellie regained her strength, her cheeks filling out, her laughter returning. The twins discovered a litter of barn cats and spent hours chasing them through the hay. Pearl followed Tobias everywhere, her small hand tucked into his larger one. And Will? Will was changing, slowly, carefully, like a wild animal learning to trust. Clara watched him one afternoon standing beside Tobias at the fence, both of them looking out at the horses. Tobias said something, and Will nodded. Then Tobias put a hand on the boy's shoulder, and Will didn't pull away. Something cracked open in Clara's chest. "You're staring." She jumped. Tobias had appeared beside her, a slight smile on his weathered face. "I wasn't staring." "You were." He leaned against the porch rail. "You do that a lot." "Do what?" "Watch us. Like you're waiting for something to go wrong." Clara looked away. Her throat tightened. "Old habit?" she said quietly. "Things always go wrong." "Not always. In my experience." "Your experience is changing." Tobias turned to face her fully. "Clara, look at me." She did. His eyes were steady, warm. "What happened before your husband Silas? All of it that's over. This is different. I'm different." "I know." "Bit." "Do you?" He took a step closer. "Because sometimes I look at you, and I see fear, like you're waiting for me to become someone else." Clara's breath caught. "Tobias? I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt those children." His voice dropped. "I need you to believe that." "I'm trying. Try harder." The words weren't cruel. They were honest, raw. Clara looked at this man who had saved her life, who had fought for her children, who had ridden through a blizzard to bring her home. "I believe you," she whispered. "I do. It's just what? I don't know how to stop being afraid." Her voice cracked. "For 2 years, fear was the only thing keeping me alive. The only thing keeping my children alive. I can't just turn it off." Tobias was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. "Then don't turn it off," he said. "Let me help carry it." Clara's eyes burned. She squeezed his hand. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The door banged open behind them. Pearl burst onto the porch, breathless. "Mama, Mr. Tobias, there's a lady coming up the road." Clara's stomach dropped. She turned, heart pounding. A wagon approached from the south. A single figure sat on the seat, driving 2 horses. Tobias squinted. "That's Hannah Porter." Clara stiffened. "What does she want?" "Only one way to find out." They waited on the porch as the wagon drew closer. Hannah Porter pulled to a stop, her face unreadable beneath her bonnet. "Mrs. Porter." Tobias's voice was neutral. "Long way from town." "I know." Hannah climbed down from the wagon, her movements stiff. She stood in the yard, hands clasped in front of her, eyes fixed on Clara. "I came to apologize." Clara blinked. "Excuse me." You heard me. Hannah's jaw tightened, like the words were being dragged out of her. I was wrong. About you, about everything. Mrs. Porter. Let me finish. The older woman took a breath. When you came to my store that day, I saw a burden. A woman with too many children and no prospects. I thought you'd bring trouble. Thought you'd drain this town dry. Clara said nothing. But I was wrong. Hannah's voice softened. I heard what happened. How you gave yourself up to protect your children. How you faced down your brother-in-law without flinching. She shook her head slowly. That's not a burden. That's strength. Clara's throat closed. She couldn't speak. Hannah reached into the wagon and pulled out a large basket. I brought some things, for you and the children. Flour, sugar, some fabric for clothes. She held it out like an offering. It's not much, but it's a start. Clara stared at the basket. At this woman who had turned her away in the cold, who had called her a burden, who had tried to drive her out of town. She should refuse, should throw the words back in Hannah's face. But she didn't. Thank you, Clara said quietly. That's very kind. Hannah nodded stiffly. Well, I should go. Wait. Clara stepped forward. Would you like some coffee? The children would love to meet you properly. Hannah hesitated. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Surprise. Maybe gratitude. I suppose I could stay for a cup. Clara led her inside. Behind them, Tobias smiled. The kitchen filled with warmth and noise. The children gathered around Hannah Porter like she was a visiting dignitary. Pearl showed her the rag doll she'd made from scraps. The twins demonstrated their ability to make barn cat sounds. Even Will nodded politely from his corner. Hannah sat at the table, her stern face softening with each passing minute. You've got fine children, Mrs. Brennan, she said finally. Fine children indeed. Thank you, they're everything to me. I can see that. Hannah set down her coffee cup. I lost a child once, a long time ago, a boy. He would have been about Will's age now. Clara's heart clenched. I'm sorry. So am I. Hannah's eyes went distant. After he died, I closed myself off. Thought if I didn't care about anyone, I couldn't get hurt again. She looked at Clara. That's why I turned you away. Not because of you, because of me. Clara reached across the table and touched Hannah's hand. I understand, she said softly. More than you know. Something passed between them. Recognition. Understanding. Hannah stood abruptly, clearing her throat. Well, I've taken up enough of your time. You're welcome back anytime, Mrs. Porter. Hannah. The older woman's voice was gruff. Call me Hannah. Clara smiled. Hannah. After Hannah left, Tobias found Clara standing alone in the kitchen, staring out the window. You okay? I think so. She turned to face him. That was unexpected. People can surprise you. Yes. Clara looked at him. They can. Something shifted in the air between them. A charge, an awareness. Tobias stepped closer. Clara. Mama. Ezra's voice came from outside, high and urgent. Mama, come quick! Clara's heart lurched. She ran for the door. Ezra stood in the yard, pointing toward the well. Josie fell in. Josie fell in the well. Time stopped. Clara didn't remember running, didn't remember screaming. One moment she was on the porch, the next she was at the well, staring down into darkness. Josie, Josie baby, can you hear me? A small voice echoed up from below. Crying. Terrified, but alive. Mama, Mama, I'm scared. I'm coming, baby. I'm coming. Clara grabbed the rope, started to climb over the edge. Tobias caught her. No, I'll go. She's my daughter. And you can't lift her out alone. I'll go down. You stay up here and pull us up. Clara wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at her to go herself. But Tobias was right. "Hurry," she gasped. "Please." Tobias grabbed the rope and lowered himself into the darkness. The seconds stretched like hours. Clara gripped the rope, her hands raw, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it. "I've got her." Tobias's voice echoed up. "Pull." Clara pulled. Her arms burned. Her back screamed. But she didn't stop. Will appeared beside her, grabbing the rope. Then Nellie. Even Ezra. Together they pulled. Tobias emerged from the well. Josie clutched against his chest. The little girl was soaked, shivering, but alive. Her eyes were wide, her breath coming in hitching sobs. Clara grabbed her daughter and sank to the ground, holding her tight. "Thank God! Thank God! Thank God!" Josie clung to her mother, crying. "Mama, I'm sorry. I was trying to see the water and I slipped." "It's okay, baby. It's okay. You're safe now." Clara looked up at Tobias. He stood above them, dripping, panting, his face pale. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." He just nodded. Then his knees buckled, and he went down. "Tobias." Clara laid Josie in Nellie's arms and scrambled to his side. He was conscious, but barely. His face had gone gray. "I'm fine," he mumbled. "Just dizzy." "You are not fine." Clara pressed her hand to his forehead. "Hot. Too hot. You're burning up. Must have caught something." He tried to stand. Failed. "Just need to rest. Will help me get him inside." Together they half-carried Tobias into the house. Clara's mind raced. He'd been in cold water. He'd been exhausted for weeks, fighting for them, protecting them, running himself ragged, and now his body was giving out. They got him into bed. Clara sent Nellie for more willow bark, sent Will to fetch Doc Finch from town. Then she sat beside Tobias and took his hand. "You stubborn fool," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me you were getting sick? Didn't want to worry you." His eyes fluttered open. "You've had enough worry. And now I get to worry about you." Clara's voice cracked. "Don't you dare die on me, Tobias McAllister. Don't you dare." "Wouldn't dream of it." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Besides, I haven't asked you yet." "Asked me what?" But his eyes had closed again. Clara sat with him through the night. His fever spiked and fell, spiked and fell. She pressed cool cloths to his forehead, dripped willow bark tea between his lips. Talked to him, even when he couldn't respond. She told him about Samuel. About their wedding day. How he'd been so nervous he'd dropped the ring twice. About the night Will was born, how Samuel had cried harder than the baby. She told him about the hard years too. The drought that nearly killed them. The winter they'd survived on nothing but beans and prayer. She told him about the night Samuel died. How she'd held his hand and felt the life slip out of him. How she'd wanted to follow him into the darkness. "But I couldn't," she whispered. "Because the children needed me. Because I had to keep going." Tobias stirred. His eyes opened, unfocused. "Clara, I'm here. I dreamed about them." His voice was raspy. "Eliza! Rose! They were here, in this room!" Clara's throat tightened. "What did they say?" "Eliza said." He paused, gathering strength. "She said it was okay. That she wanted me to be happy." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "Tobias, I loved her," he said. "I'll always love her. But she's gone. And you're here." He reached up, touched Clara's face with trembling fingers. "You're here, and I—" "Don't talk. Rest." "I have to say this." His eyes found hers. "In case I don't get another chance." "You'll have plenty of chances. You're not dying." "Maybe not. But I need you to know." He drew a shaking breath. "I love you, Clara Brennan. I love your strength. I love your stubbornness. I love the way you look at your children like they're the only thing in the world that matters." His voice broke. "I love you. And when this fever breaks, I'm going to ask you to be my wife." Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "You don't have to answer now," Tobias continued. "You don't have to answer ever if you don't want to. But I needed you to know. In case—" "Yes." He blinked. "What?" "Yes." Clara was crying openly now. "When this fever breaks, when you're well again, yes, I'll marry you." Something broke across Tobias's face. Relief, joy, love. "You mean it?" "I mean it." She leaned down and pressed her forehead to his. "I love you too, Tobias McAllister. I didn't think I could. I didn't think I had anything left. But you brought me back to life." His hand found hers, their fingers intertwined. "Then live," he whispered. "Live with me." "I will." She kissed his forehead. "I will." Doc Finch arrived at dawn. He examined Tobias with practiced hands, his weathered face giving nothing away. Clara stood in the corner, arms wrapped around herself, waiting. Finally, Doc straightened. "Pneumonia," he said. "Early stages. He's strong. Should pull through." Clara's legs nearly gave out. "Thank God." "Keep him warm. Keep him resting. No getting up no matter what he says." Doc gave her a knowing look. "I know how stubborn that man is." "I'll tie him to the bed if I have to." "I believe you would." Doc packed up his bag. "I'll come back tomorrow. But he's got the best medicine right here." He nodded toward Clara. "Something to live for." After Doc left, Clara returned to Tobias's side. He was sleeping now, his breathing easier, his color better. She watched his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like a prayer. The door creaked open behind her. Pearl crept in, her rag doll clutched against her chest. "Mama, is Mr. Tobias going to be okay?" "Yes, baby. He's going to be just fine." Pearl climbed onto the bed, careful not to disturb Tobias. She curled up against Clara's side. "Mama?" "Yes. I love Mr. Tobias." Clara's heart clenched. "I know you do. I want him to be my daddy." Pearl's voice was matter-of-fact, the way only children's can be. "Is that okay? I know I already had a daddy, but he's in heaven now, and Mr. Tobias is here." Tears slid down Clara's cheeks. "Yes, baby. That's okay." "Good." Pearl snuggled closer. "He said yes, didn't he?" Clara looked at her daughter. "What do you mean?" "He asked you to marry him. I heard him last night." Pearl smiled. "You said yes. I heard that too." Clara laughed, a wet, broken sound. "You were supposed to be asleep." "I was, but I woke up." Pearl reached out and touched Tobias's hand. "I'm glad you said yes, Mama. We're going to be a real family now." Clara pulled her daughter close and looked at Tobias, at his peaceful face, at the steady rise and fall of his chest. "Yes, baby," she whispered. "We are." The fever broke 3 days later. Tobias woke clear-eyed and hungry, demanding to get out of bed. Clara refused. They argued. The children watched with barely concealed amusement. In the end, Clara won. She always did. But she let him sit up. Let him eat solid food. Let the children pile onto the bed and tell him everything he'd missed. "Mr. Tobias?" Ezra bounced on the mattress. "James tried to eat a bug yesterday." "Did he now?" "It was a beetle. Nellie made him spit it out." "Good for Nellie." Will hung back as always, but Clara caught him smiling. When the children finally scattered, Tobias reached for Clara's hand. "So," he said, "did you mean it?" "Mean what?" "What you said. When I was delirious with fever. When I asked you to marry you." Clara smiled. "Yes, I meant it." Tobias's face broke into a grin. The first real grin Clara had ever seen from him. It transformed his weathered features, made him look younger, lighter. "Then I'd better make it official." He tried to get up. Tobias McAllister, you stay in that bed. Just give me 1 minute. He reached under his pillow and pulled something out. A small object wrapped in cloth. Clara's breath caught. Tobias unwrapped it carefully. Inside lay a ring. Simple. Gold. A small blue stone set in the center. This was my mother's, he said quietly. She gave it to me before she died. Told me to give it to someone worthy. He looked up at Clara. I've been waiting 30 years to find someone worthy. Clara's hands shook. Tobias. Clara Jane Brennan. His voice was steady, sure. Will you marry me? Will you let me be a husband to you and a father to your children? Will you let me love you for the rest of my days? Clara looked at the ring, at this man, at everything he'd given her. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, yes. Tobias slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he pulled her down and kissed her. Clara had been kissed before, by Samuel many times. But this was different. This wasn't the comfortable warmth of a long marriage. This was fire. This was promise. This was the beginning of something new. When they finally broke apart, Clara was crying. Happy tears, Tobias asked. The happiest. The door burst open. 6 children tumbled in, clearly having been listening at the keyhole. Did she say yes? Pearl demanded. Did she? Tobias laughed. She said yes. The room exploded with cheers. Pearl jumped onto the bed. The twins followed. Ezra did a little dance in the corner. Even Will was grinning. Does this mean we can call you Pa now? Ezra asked. Tobias looked at Clara, then at the children. His children now. I'd like that, he said softly. I'd like that very much. Ezra launched himself at Tobias, wrapping his arms around the man's neck. Pa, pa, pa. One by one the others followed. Pearl, the twins, Nellie. Will hung back as always. But then Clara saw something change in her son's face. Something soften. He walked to the bed, stood before Tobias. I ain't calling you Pa, he said gruffly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. My pa was Samuel Brennan, and that ain't gonna change. Tobias nodded. I understand. But, Will swallowed hard. But I reckon I could call you something, if you want. What's that? Will's voice dropped. Father. Tobias's eyes glistened. He reached out and gripped Will's shoulder. I'd be honored, son. Will nodded once. Then he did something he'd never done before. He leaned down and hugged Tobias McAllister. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. Her family. Her whole beautiful, broken, mended family. Together at last. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara sat on the porch with Tobias. The sky was clear stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black velvet. The air was cold, but Tobias had wrapped a blanket around them both. Tobias. What happens now? He looked at her. What do you mean? I mean... Clara hesitated. This is your ranch, your home. But I have nothing. I'm bringing 6 children into your life, and I can't contribute. Stop. Tobias turned to face her fully. This isn't my ranch anymore, Clara. It's ours. Everything I have is yours. The land, the house, the horses, all of it. That's not fair to you. Fair. He almost laughed. You gave me back my life. You gave me a family. You gave me a reason to wake up in the morning. He cupped her face in his hands. There's nothing you could take from me that would come close to what you've given. Clara's eyes burned. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You survived. Tobias kissed her forehead. You fought. You never gave up even when you had every reason to. He pulled back and looked into her eyes. That's what you did. And it was more than enough. Clara leaned into him, letting his warmth surround her. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. He pressed his lips to her hair. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it. They sat together in the darkness, wrapped in their blanket watching the stars. Behind them, the house was full. Full of sleeping children. Full of warmth. Full of hope. And Clara Brennan, who had once been a widow with 6 children, and nothing to her name, finally understood what it meant to be home. The wedding was set for Christmas Eve. Clara had wanted something simple. Just the family, maybe Doc Finch as a witness. But the town had other ideas. Word spread fast in Elkhorn Valley. Within days, Hannah Porter had organized a committee. The general store donated fabric for a dress. The blacksmith's wife offered to bake the cake. Even the saloon keeper, the same man who'd suggested Clara find different work that first terrible day, sent over 3 bottles of his best whiskey with an apology note. Clara didn't know what to do with all of it. Let them, Tobias said when she worried aloud. They're trying to make amends. Let them. It feels strange, being wanted. Tobias pulled her close. Get used to it. The days before the wedding blurred together. Clara found herself swept up in preparations she'd never asked for but couldn't refuse. Nellie and Pearl spent hours helping Hannah alter the wedding dress, their small fingers surprisingly nimble with needle and thread. The twins were tasked with decorating the church, a job they approached with more enthusiasm than skill. Ezra attached himself to Tobias like a shadow, following the man everywhere, peppering him with questions. When you marry Mama, does that mean you're really our pa? It does. And we'll live here forever. Forever. And nobody can take us away. Tobias crouched down to the boy's level. Nobody, Ezra. Not ever. I promise. Ezra threw his arms around Tobias's neck. Good. Because I like it here. I like you. Clara watched from the doorway, her heart so full it hurt. Will kept his distance from the festivities. He helped where he was asked, didn't complain, didn't cause trouble. But there was something in his eyes that worried Clara. Something unresolved. She found him alone in the barn, the night before the wedding, sitting on a hay bale, staring at nothing. Will. He didn't look up. Ma. Clara sat beside him. The hay prickled through her dress, but she didn't care. Talk to me. Nothing to talk about. William Samuel Brennan. I've known you for 13 years. I know when something's wrong. Will was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. I keep thinking about Pa. Clara's chest tightened. I think about him too. Do you? Will looked at her then, and she saw the accusation in his eyes. Because it seems like you've forgotten him pretty quick. The words hit like a slap. Clara drew a sharp breath. Is that what you think? That I've forgotten your father? Haven't you? Will's voice rose. He's been dead 2 years, and you're already marrying someone else. Moving into someone else's house. Letting someone else be our pa. Will, he loved you. Will's face crumpled. He loved all of us, and now it's like he never existed. Clara reached for her son, but he pulled away. Don't. William. Clara's voice was firm but gentle. Look at me. He didn't want to. She could see the resistance in every line of his body. But finally, reluctantly, he met her eyes. I will never forget your father, Clara said quietly. Never. He was my first love. He gave me you. He gave me your brothers and sisters. He worked himself to the bone trying to give us a good life. Her voice broke. Loving Tobias doesn't mean I stopped loving Samuel. It means my heart grew big enough to hold them both. Will's lip trembled. But why does it have to be someone else? Why can't it just be us? Because we deserve more than surviving baby. Clara reached out again, and this time Will let her take his hand. We deserve to live, to be happy, to have a home where we're wanted. But what if... Will's voice dropped to a whisper. What if he leaves? What if he dies? What if we lose him too? And there it was, the fear beneath the anger, the wound that hadn't healed. Clara pulled her son close. He resisted for a moment, then collapsed against her, 13 years old, and trying so hard to be a man. I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen, Clara whispered into his hair. I can't promise Tobias won't get sick or hurt or worse, but I can promise you this: whatever happens, we face it together, as a family. Will's shoulders shook. He was crying, Clara realized. For the first time since his father's funeral, her strong, stubborn son was letting himself cry. I miss him, Ma. I miss Pa so much. I know, baby. I miss him too. They sat together in the barn, mother and son, letting the grief flow through them, letting it go. Finally, Will pulled back. His face was blotchy, his eyes red. Does Tobias really love us? He asked. All of us, even me. Especially you. Clara wiped his cheeks with her thumb. He sees himself in you, Will. A young man trying to protect his family. He respects that. Will was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. I reckon I could give him a chance. A real chance. Clara smiled. That's all anyone can ask. Christmas Eve dawned cold and bright. Clara woke before sunrise, nerves fluttering in her stomach. Today she would marry Tobias McAllister. Today her children would officially have a father again. Today, everything would change. She lay in bed for a long moment, listening to the sounds of the house waking up. Pearl's excited chatter. Ezra's thumping footsteps. The twins squabbling over something as always. And beneath it all, Tobias's low voice, steady and calm. Home. This was home. Clara rose and dressed carefully. The wedding dress Hannah had altered fit perfectly white cotton with tiny blue flowers embroidered along the hem. Simple but beautiful. Nellie appeared at the door, eyes shining. Mama, you look like a princess. Princesses don't have gray hair and wrinkles. You do too, Nellie grinned. But you're still beautiful. Clara hugged her daughter tight. Thank you, baby. The ceremony was held in the small church at the edge of town. Every pew was filled. Ranchers and their wives, shopkeepers, the blacksmith and his apprentice, even the saloon keeper hat in hand, looking uncomfortable but present. Clara stood at the back of the church, heart pounding, waiting for the signal to walk. Ma! Will appeared beside her. You ready? Clara looked at her son. He was wearing a new suit too big in the shoulders, borrowed from Doc Finch. His hair was combed back, his face freshly scrubbed. I want to walk you down the aisle, he said gruffly. If that's okay. I know I ain't. I know I'm not Pa, but I'm the man of the family. Or I was. He swallowed. I figure it's my job to give you away. Clara's eyes filled with tears. William. Don't cry, Ma. You'll ruin your dress. She laughed a wet, broken sound and took his arm. I would be honored. The doors opened. Clara walked down the aisle on her son's arm, and the world fell away. She didn't see the pews full of people, didn't see the decorations the twins had made, didn't see anything but Tobias. He stood at the altar dressed in his best clothes, his hair slicked back, his eyes fixed on her. And in those eyes, Clara saw everything she'd ever wanted. Love. Acceptance. Home. Will delivered her to Tobias's side, then stepped back. For a moment, the two men looked at each other. Something passed between them. Understanding. Respect. Tobias nodded once. Will nodded back. Then Clara took Tobias's hands and the ceremony began. Reverend Jacob Thornton kept the service simple. Vows were exchanged. Rings were placed. Promises were made. But it was Tobias's words that Clara would remember forever. I, Tobias James McAllister, take you, Clara Jane Brennan, to be my wife. I promise to love you in sickness and in health, in good times and bad. I promise to be a husband to you and a father to your children. I promise to stand beside you against any storm, any enemy, any hardship that comes our way." His voice dropped. "And I promise before God and these witnesses that you will never be alone again." Clara couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face. "Clara?" Reverend Thornton prompted gently. "Your vows." She drew a shaking breath. "I, Clara Jane Brennan, take you Tobias James McAllister to be my husband. I was broken when you found me, lost, afraid, ready to give up." Her voice strengthened. "You gave me shelter when I had none. You gave my children a home. You gave me hope when I thought hope was dead." She squeezed his hands. "I promise to love you for the rest of my days. I promise to stand beside you, to support you, to build a life with you. And I promise—" Her voice cracked. "I promise to let you love me, even when I'm scared, even when I don't think I deserve it." Tobias's eyes glistened. He lifted her hand and pressed it to his heart. "You deserve everything," he whispered. "Everything." Reverend Thornton cleared his throat. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Tobias, you may kiss your bride." Tobias cupped Clara's face in his hands and kissed her. The church erupted in cheers. Pearl's voice rang out above the rest. "Mama and Pa are married. We're a real family now." Clara laughed against Tobias's lips. He pulled back, grinning. "I love you, Mrs. McAllister." "I love you too, Mr. McAllister." They turned to face the congregation, hand in hand. Their family surrounded them, Pearl bouncing with excitement, the twins clinging to Tobias's legs, Ezra grinning from ear to ear, Nellie crying happy tears, and Will standing tall, a small smile on his face. "Congratulations, Father," he said quietly. Tobias pulled the boy into a hug. "Thank you, son." Clara watched them, her husband and her son, and felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace. The celebration lasted well into the night. There was food and music and dancing. The children stayed up far past their bedtime, running wild with excitement. Even Hannah Porter was seen smiling, her stern face softened by the warmth of the evening. Clara danced with Tobias, with Will, with each of her children in turn. She danced until her feet ached and her heart was full to bursting. Finally, as the stars wheeled overhead and the last guests departed, Clara found herself alone with Tobias on the porch of their home. Their home. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I knew was possible." Tobias wrapped his arm around her. "This is just the beginning, Clara. We've got our whole lives ahead of us." "I know." She leaned into him. "And I can't wait to live every moment." They stood together in the darkness, watching the snow fall softly around them. Inside, the children were finally asleep. The house was quiet, peaceful. Tobias, thank you." He looked down at her. "For what?" "For seeing me. When everyone else saw a burden, you saw a person. When everyone else turned away, you opened your door." Her voice dropped. "You saved us." "No." Tobias shook his head. "You saved yourselves. All I did was give you a place to land. It was more than that." "Maybe." He kissed her forehead. "But you would have survived without me, Clara. You're the strongest woman I've ever known." Clara shook her head. "I don't feel strong." "That's how I know you are." Tobias tilted her chin up, made her look at him. "Strength isn't about feeling powerful. It's about getting up when you want to stay down. It's about fighting when you want to quit. It's about loving when you're terrified of getting hurt." He smiled. "You've done all of that, every single day, Engel, for 2 years." Clara's throat tightened. "I almost gave up. That day in the snow. When you found us, I almost gave up." "But you didn't." "Because Pearl wouldn't let me. She said if I fell, they'd all fall." "Smart girl." Tobias's eyes softened. She was right, you know. You held them together, Clara, through everything. You were their anchor. And now you don't have to be the anchor alone. He pulled her close. Now we hold each other. They stayed on the porch until the cold drove them inside. The house was warm. The fire crackled low. Somewhere upstairs, a child mumbled in their sleep. Clara looked around at the walls that had become her home. At the table where her children ate breakfast every morning. At the chairs gathered around the hearth, one for each of them. I never thought I'd have this again, she said softly. A home, a family, a future. You'll never not have it again, Tobias said. I swear it. Clara believed him. The months that followed were the happiest of Clara's life. Spring came slowly to Elkhorn Valley, melting the snow, coaxing green shoots from the frozen ground. The children bloomed with it. Ezra grew 3 inches and had to have all his pants let out. Nellie discovered a talent for sketching and spent hours drawing the horses, the mountains, the family. The twins finally stopped squabbling long enough to become inseparable, finishing each other's sentences like 2 halves of one whole. Pearl appointed herself Tobias's official helper, following him around the ranch with a seriousness that made Clara smile. And Will. Will was becoming a man. He worked alongside Tobias every day, learning to rope and ride and mend fences. The anger that had simmered beneath his surface for so long began to fade, replaced by something steadier, something stronger. One evening, Clara found them together at the corral, watching the sunset. He's a good boy, Tobias said when she joined them. Going to be a fine man. Will ducked his head, embarrassed, but Clara saw the pride in his eyes. He has a good teacher, she said. The summer brought new challenges, a drought that threatened the crops, a fever that swept through the valley, taking 3 lives before it burned itself out, a confrontation with a neighboring rancher over water rights that nearly came to blows. But through it all, the family held. They faced every challenge together, supported each other, loved each other. And slowly, carefully, Clara learned to stop waiting for disaster. She learned to trust. She learned to be happy. 1 year to the day after they first arrived at the ranch, Clara gathered her family for a special dinner. The table was crowded now. 8 chairs squeezed around a table meant for 6. Elbows bumped, plates clinked. The twins argued over who got the last roll. It was chaos. Beautiful, perfect chaos. Tobias stood at the head of the table, glass raised. I want to make a toast. The children quieted. Even the twins stopped squabbling. 1 year ago today, a woman and 6 children arrived at my door in the middle of a blizzard. They were cold, hungry, scared. They had been turned away by everyone, abandoned, unwanted. He looked at Clara. I didn't know it then, but that was the day my life began again. Clara's eyes blurred with tears. This past year has been the happiest of my life, Tobias continued. Not because of the ranch, not because of the land, but because of all of you. He looked at each child in turn. Will, Nellie, Ezra, Pearl, Josie, James. You've made this house a home. You've filled it with noise and laughter and love. His voice roughened. You've made me a father again. Pearl was crying openly now. Even Will's eyes were suspiciously bright. And Clara. Tobias's gaze returned to his wife. My Clara, you've made me a husband, a partner, a better man. He raised his glass higher. To family, to home, to the life we've built together. To family, everyone echoed. They drank, they ate, they laughed until their sides hurt. And later, when the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Clara sat with Tobias by the fire. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Regret what? Taking us in. That day in the snow. You could have kept riding. You could have left us there. Tobias was quiet for a moment. Then he took her hand. I've regretted a lot of things in my life, Clara. letting Eliza and Rose die, closing myself off for 4 years, wasting so much time being afraid. He squeezed her fingers. But taking you in, that's the one thing I'll never regret. Not for a single moment. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. I was so scared that day, she admitted. When you offered us shelter, I thought it was a trick. I thought you wanted something. I did want something. Clara looked up at him. What? This. Tobias gestured around them. A family, a purpose, a reason to wake up every morning. He smiled. You gave me all of that. You and those 6 children. You gave me everything. Clara kissed him softly. I think we gave each other everything. I think you're right. They sat together in the firelight, watching the flames dance, listening to the wind outside. Tobias? Pearl asked me something today. What's that? Clara smiled. She asked if we could get a dog. Tobias laughed. A dog. We've already got 6 children, a dozen horses, and 3 barn cats. That's what I said. But she was very persuasive. She always is. Tobias shook his head, still smiling. What did you tell her? I told her to ask you. Of course you did. He pulled her closer. I suppose we could find room for one more. That's what I figured you'd say. You know me too well, Mrs. McAllister. I'm learning, Mr. McAllister. Clara snuggled into his side. I'm learning. They stayed by the fire until it burned down to embers. Then Tobias stood, offered Clara his hand, and led her upstairs. They passed the children's rooms one by one, Pearl and Nellie sharing a bed, their breathing soft and even. The twins curled together like puppies. Ezra sprawled across his mattress, one arm hanging off the side, and Will in his own room, now almost a man sleeping peacefully for the first time in years. Clara paused at each door, her heart full. These were her children, her family, her life. She had come to this place broken, desperate, ready to give up. She was leaving it whole. Tobias waited for her at the end of the hall. Ready! Clara looked back one more time, at the house that had become her home, at the family she had found against all odds. Then she turned to her husband and smiled. Ready. They walked into their room together and closed the door. Outside, the stars blazed across the winter sky. The wind whispered through the pines. The ranch lay peaceful under a blanket of snow, and inside a family slept. A widow who had been told she was a burden, a rancher who had been ready to die alone, and 6 children who had been told nobody wanted them. They had found each other in a blizzard. They had chosen each other against all odds. And they had proven once and for all that love doesn't count mouths to feed or calculate costs. Love just opens the door and says, Good, I want all of you. Clara Brennan McAllister had spent 2 years running from rejection, 2 years hearing that she was too much, too many children, too much trouble, too much burden. But Tobias McAllister had looked at her and seen something else. He had seen a family worth saving, and in saving them he had saved himself. The wind howled outside, but inside the ranch house all was warm. All was safe. All was home. And Clara, for the first time in her life, understood what it meant to truly belong. Not because someone tolerated her, not because someone pitied her, but because someone chose her. All of her. Every broken piece. Every scared child. Every ounce of love she had to give. Tobias McAllister had looked at a widow with 6 children and said the words that changed everything. Good. I want all of you. And he meant it. He meant every word. That was the miracle. Not that Clara had survived. Not that she had found shelter. The miracle was that she had found love. Real love. The kind that doesn't ask what you can give. The kind that only asks you to stay. Clara Brennan McAllister was home. And she was never leaving again. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love finds a way even in the darkest storms, hit that like button and let us know. Subscribe to Wild West Love Stories for more tales of courage, redemption, and hearts that refuse to give up. Comment below and tell us what part moved you most. Because stories like this, they're not just entertainment. They're proof that nobody is too broken to be loved. Nobody is too much. And somewhere out there, someone is waiting to say those three beautiful words, I want you, all of you.